Hi guys, welcome back to Axis and Allies, the Garrison. This is Detroit once again coming to you from the bunker here in Rochelle Park, New Jersey, with my son Brandon.
Hi guys.
Who's my assistant for the day, okay, for this episode anyway. In any case, let's go ahead and talk about the game, okay. As you guys well know, Germany just went. We in the last turn, Germany started off with the beginning of round 6, okay. So now it is now 6.2, Russia's turn, and for those of you who do not know, who do not yet know, war torn unfortunately will be unable to continue playing with the Soviet Union. Okay, unfortunately for a good friend, he is quite a bit busy at home with family responsibilities and other things that he's got to take care of. So he nicely asked us, or that if it'd be okay if one of us would take over the USSR for him. And of course, there's never a shortage of volunteers when it comes to the game of Axis and Allies. So our good friend Dutch Lancaster, who's currently playing with Anzac in France, will be from this moment onwards playing with the Soviet Union, and that's of course what he did today. So yes, so the current ground situation for the Soviet Union, I would have to say, did improve the last couple of rounds. Reason being that Germany focused very heavily on attacking Germany, okay, giving some respite to our friends, the Russians. So now the Soviet Union has had the capacity to perform limited offensives against the Germans. Okay, so now though the numbers up, Germany will start attacking Russia heavily, and we shall see how our good friend Dutch Lancaster goes about responding to a renewed German offensive starting round 7 and round 8, which will be the last 2 remaining rounds of this YouTube Wars game of Axis and Allies here in the Garrison. Any comments?
Not really. It's just getting a little interesting now.
Yeah, well, it's been interesting for quite a while already. Have you been?
No, but now it's like you're watching. You're looking around the corners for every little thing. Cause when Sire split up his forces, I think
Yes, he
he
did.
split up his forces. Nobody really expected that.
No one. Yeah, he's right. Brandon is very right on that. Sire, who's playing with Germany, actually did surprise us because he split up his forces.
Yeah.
He did focus though more on Germany though than Russia. Okay, and when he did that, he really did catch us off guard. We never saw it coming.
It was a smart move.
It was a very smart move, yes, because he definitely outflanked the UK, and the UK was not able to recover. You know, so a very smart move on his part, and you're right about that.
If I were in that situation, and if I were to go either one way or other, I would probably look at which way is the most dangerous one.
Really, you're more of an aggressive player, I would say.
Yeah, I would look for the one that would send me down fighting.
Yeah.
So the one, like, I know I would lose, but at least I could go back there and there's still damage.
Yeah, but sometimes it's not about picking the toughest fight. Sometimes about fighting smart, and I think that's what Sire did here. He definitely did the right thing by fighting smart, and that's exactly what he did. All right, so in any case, let's go ahead, guys, and with 6.2, where Dutch Lancaster makes his combat moves and purchases for the Soviet Union, aka Russia, aka USSR. All right. Okay. So I hope you enjoy this episode, guys. And as always, let us know what you think. All right, guys. Welcome back, and we're here with the current ground situation on the Russian front, or the Eastern Front, where the Germans and Italians are facing off against the Russians. Okay, as you can see, the Russians have 2 major army groups. You have an army group center, which is the one based in Moscow, which has 7 infantry, 3 artillery, 2 fighters, and 1 tactical bomber. Then you have another army group down south in Rostov, where you have 3 artillery divisions, 3 infantry divisions, 2 armored divisions, and 1 French infantry division that has slowly made its way from all the way from Syria. Okay, so that single infantry division is one of the last 2 French infantry divisions that are remaining in the game. Okay, so what are they facing? Okay, so yes, right now as is, there is no existent German army group center. Okay, the Russians are unopposed. However, the Russians are facing a smaller German army group in Romania consisting of 4 infantry, 2 Italian infantry divisions, and a combined air force of 5 tactical strategic bombers. So that's a pretty, even though it's a small number of units that we're talking about, the actual firepower of that army group is actually pretty considerable when you take in part the fact that the German bombers attack at 2. Okay, so basically each bomber has the attack power of 2 bombers, which is gives it, of course, considerable firepower. Up here in the north, you have 3 German armored divisions with 1 infantry division and 1 bomber, which interestingly enough also are basically unopposed. The Russian territories of Archangel and Belarus are unoccupied. So even though it's a small German group up in the north, they themselves are not under threat. And if anything, it's the Germans that are here could potentially go on the offense with some ease. All right, so what do we have on the Pacific side or the Siberian side of the war? Well, definitely, let me put these 2 guys. I'm getting ahead. I'm going to put these 2 guys back here, which are 2 light Russian army units that are supposed to be in central Mongolia. All we have here is 1 big Russian army consisting of about 15 infantry, I believe, and 2 light cavalry or 2 light armored units that are in central Mongolia. Okay, so, and of course, they're faced off with a greatly diminished Japanese army also that has been having its own woes, its own troubles against the United States. So the Japanese have had no choice but to re-engage or focus on the American Navy, hence giving the Russians some respite also on the Siberian front. All right, so let's go ahead with the purchases that Dutch Lancaster made with the Russians. And the Russians purchased 3 infantry divisions, 1 artillery, and 2 new squadrons of tactical bombers. Okay, so this purchase I really like. It's a sensible purchase. It makes sense to me because those 2 tactical bombers will be enhanced by the fact that the Russians already have two fighters. So with the combined arms effects, these tactical bombers will be attacking at a die roll of 4 or less. So it makes sense for Russia to buy tactical bombers at this point in time, at this stage of the game. All right, guys, so let's go ahead with the combat movements, and I'll be back shortly with the actual movements on the board. All right, so let's go ahead with the actual combat movements here. So what's going on in the Siberian front of the Russo-Japanese war here is that the Russians will be attacking the Japanese at the Amur at a movement of 2, 1 and 2. These 2 light armored units will be attacking, okay, the Japanese armored and artillery division that is defending the Amur. Okay, so that's the first battle. The Russians do have a slight disadvantage because both of these light cavalry or light armored units attack with a die roll of 2, whereas the Japanese will be defending with die roll of 1 at 3 and 1 at 2, so they have a slight advantage, the defending units. All right, so the Japanese will also be moving in. The Russians will also be moving into Shahar and attacking the single infantry division. That's 15 Russian infantry divisions will be attacking one Japanese defending infantry division in Shahar. All right, so what's going on the eastern, on the western front, which is actually the eastern front, depending on how you see it. You have these two infantry divisions coming in from the Urals and will be walking into Vologda and Venetia. Okay, so both of these two territories will automatically become not German but Russian. So they're being liberated by their Russian countrymen. All right, so there are an additional 2 battles in the south that have to be fought. All right, so in the Ukraine, you have 1 German artillery division that is defending. These 2 infantry divisions, Russian, are coming in from Rostov, that are accompanied or supported by 2 Russian fighters and 1 tactical bomber. And of course, they're coming from Russia at a movement of 2. Okay, so these aircraft will have 3 movements left in their gas gauges. So it's going to be 2 infantry, 2 Russian fighters, and 1 tactical bomber squadron attacking 1 single German artillery division defending the Ukraines. Okay, to the north, you have the last battle being fought, where you have 6 Russian artillery divisions, 1 infantry division, and 2 armored divisions attacking the single German mechanized infantry division that is defending Bryansk. Okay, so what happened here was you have 3 artillery, 1 infantry, and 2 armored units coming from Rostov. Okay, the other 3 artillery pieces are coming from Moscow, from Russia itself. Okay, all right, guys. So basically, these are the 6 battles that were declared by Dutch Lancaster. He definitely is going on the offense. He is building upon the groundwork that had been previously laid down by War Torn, that now gives Dutch the capacity, the wherewithal to be able to go on the offense. Okay, and once again, I don't mean to sound repetitive, but this is possible because the Germans, for the past 2 rounds, have been focusing heavily against the allies in the Atlantic, in particular the UK, all right, with Operation Sea Lion. All right, guys, so stand by, and we'll be back with the actual results of combat. Total of 6 battles being fought right now, and we'll have the results of battle for you shortly. All right, guys, so we're back, and we're going to review the results of battle for the order of combat for this turn with Russia. Okay, so let's start first with the battles for on the Eastern Front. As you well know, the Russians walked into Venetia and Vologda, effectively recovering those 2 territories for Russia. Okay, in Bryansk, the defending mechanized German infantry division was wiped out. The Russians did not sustain any losses. Same thing in the Ukraine. The defending artillery division was also wiped out. The Russians did not sustain any losses. The 3 attacking aircraft, Russian aircraft, had remaining 3 movements left in the fuel gauges, and they returned back to Moscow. Okay, so interesting small battles, but key little battles that definitely benefited Russia immensely, because for the first time in the game since the war started, Russia had not necessarily always rolled well. For the first time, the Russians did not sustain any casualties, if my memory serves me right. Okay, so now let's go to the Siberian front, where the Russians also had successes. However, there were losses. The 15 attacking Russian infantry divisions attacked the single Japanese infantry division defending Shahar, and they both lost 1 unit. So the Russians now have 14 units that survived, or infantry divisions. During the non-combat movement, the 2 AAA pieces did move into Shahar. All right, so the battle for the Amur, this by far is the single greatest victory of this of this turn for Russia. Reason being that they were the underdogs. The Japanese had the upper hand, and the two attacking light armored units were able to successfully attack and defeat the defending Japanese armored unit, okay, and artillery piece. Okay, so the Russians were able to retake the Amur, and good for them. Okay, so this is definitely a battle of consequence, because these two pieces, the two Japanese divisions that were here, were potentially threatening the Americans and British forces in Korea. Okay, so yes, you may say, oh, it's only an artillery and armored unit, but don't forget that the Japanese do have a considerable air force that could have been utilized, okay, to retake Korea. And that's something that G.I. Joe, I'm sure, would have considered if he would have had two pieces here, two ground units in the Amur. And let's not forget that Japan also has two bombers with ground units that could very easily have been dropped into Korea. So definitely the fact that these ground units are no longer there greatly benefits the war effort for the Allies in the Pacific. All right, so let's go ahead then with the non-combat movements and final placements of the purchases that were made by Dutch Lancaster. All right, so this is the non-combat movement stage. As I previously mentioned, I had already moved these two AAAs into Shahar. All right, let's see what other non-combat movements were made by the Russians. Okay, so the Russians had a total of, I believe, of what is it? Couple of, I believe it was 5 or 6 infantry divisions that were here. 3 moved into the Amur, into Archangel, into Archangel. And the other units that were here, the remaining infantry, were moved into Smolensk to reinforce this Russian territory. Okay, now there were also 2 AAAs, okay, that were in Rostov. One ended up in Smolensk, okay, and the other was railroaded, or actually moved into Bryansk, okay, and of course the 3 attacking Russian aircraft that attacked the Ukraine were landed back into Moscow, into the territory of Russia. And that's pretty much, oh, and I'm forgetting the Russian fleet moved in from 114 into Sea Zone 113, and that makes sense, okay, because if by any stroke of luck, if the Russians can get out, okay, if they're ever able to get into the Northern Sea or into the English Channel, they'll be a lot closer to the Atlantic, which would aid them into making an escape. So it's a smart move on Dutch Lancaster's part to move his fleet into Sea Zone 113. Odds are it won't get out, but if it does, its odds greatly improve if that's the case. All right, so now let's go into final placement of units. And Dutch went ahead and placed 3 more infantry divisions from that are coming out of the industrial complex in Archangel. So that now makes it 6 infantry divisions that are defending, okay, Archangel, okay. Also, he placed 2 fighters in Moscow, along with one newly built artillery piece. And as it turns out, because he had made an error with his math, Dutch could purchase and place an additional artillery. So instead of only 1, he was able to get an additional artillery piece, which he placed in Rostov. Okay. All right, and that's it for the final placements of his newly purchased units. And as you can see now, we have a resurgent Russia, okay, with a static front now. Basically, the Russians have been able to reestablish a formidable front with a southern army group, a central army group, and a northern army group. And what's interesting here is that whatever the Germans do, at least as far as the front is concerned, the Russians have a counter. The Russians can't counter, from what I'm seeing here, any attacks that the Germans may make for round 7. Round 8, that's a different subject. But as far as round 7 is concerned, the Russians are well situated, strategically speaking and tactically speaking, for the defense of the motherland. All right, guys, that's about it for this turn, for the Russian turn, round 6. Now it is the end of 6.2. Let me know what you guys think as far as the strategies that are being used, and what do you think Germany should do now, and what should the Russians do for round 7? Okay, how should they respond? Also, how should Dutch Lancaster, how he being the Russian commander, what should he do in the Siberian front? Is he managing his forces effectively, or do you think that there's something else, something that he missed, that he could potentially do to aid the war effort for the Allies? All right, guys, let me know. And as always, don't forget to hunker down and play. The torch now is turned over to G.I. Joe and the Imperial Japanese Army and Navy.